about 7 generations into the future and what that means. And what I love about this film is that it could be really bleak, it could go into what's wrong with the system, which it does do, but it's also incredibly empowering in showing us what we can do as individuals to create change. There was a couple of really beautiful elements that stood out for me. One of those was Colin, who had the farm. His father had that sheep wool farm, wasn't it? And they had that massive fire, which was obviously devastating, but then also created the most beautiful opportunity for them to connect with the land which they had so plundered. And he has totally changed his tune, coming from a family of generations who plundered the soil. Is now coming out and saying that industrialised farming is no way to farm for our future. So I think that there's real beauty in that, and that common thread as well about that connection that we seem to have lost in our conventional way of producing and consuming food is really what we need to try and rekindle. So I'd like to invite Nick and Maria up, and also Griz from Wild Ferments, just to take a couple of questions. If anyone wants to, I guess, share their thoughts on the film, or perhaps any questions they have about how they can help create change for themselves and for their communities. Anyone want to ask anyone up here a question? Yeah.
Is there a list of all the organisations that were in that film available? Because it wasn't writing them all down, but there's really interesting organisations there.
That's a good question. I'm not sure we've actually got a list of all the organisations, but no, that's a good question actually. Maybe we should do that. Yeah, we'll make a list of all the organisations. Thank you. I can let you know. We can. We know that they're just. Yeah, it's easy to share. So.
Do you have any plans to get this film onto mainstream television or something? Because
we were talking about that before.
You're almost preaching to a converted audience. I think we're all people who are passionate about it, right? But getting this out to people that are ignorant, I guess. No, that's exactly what we're going to try and do. I had the good fortune. We showed this film, as I said, in Wagga a couple of weeks ago, and I met a reporter on Landline, ABC Landline, and he saw the film. We had a bit of a chat about that and how it might be done. And you saw there Costa Georgiadis, who presents the program on SBS. So it's certainly an objective, because you're exactly right. We need to get these messages out to a much wider audience. Absolutely.
I have a question, I've got an observation. You're presenting something that's really, people can find it really confronting and overwhelming and balk at that information if you try to share that, and you've made it really accessible and human. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I should say I brought some DVDs which we are making available if anyone wants to take a DVD home to share with family, friends, neighbours. I've got a bunch of DVDs here for $20. So, just let you know. Thank you.
I guess I might. Oh, sorry, you want to go ahead?
I was just going to say, do you think you'll have much opposition from like the big supermarket chains in response to this sort of film that is preaching to other farms to convert to other sorts of methods where they're not going to be able to get cheap produce and like sort of take the fund for the
there's a couple of things I'd say about that. One is, interestingly, I think what the big supermarkets are doing is maybe not sort of trying to oppose this at this stage, but rather kind of co-opt it. So Coles have got like a marketing strategy where they're trying to be almost like a farmer's market, and they have faces of farmers on their produce and trying to do that farmer's market thing about food with a face. And Woolworths, interestingly, saw there Katie Barfield, one of the organisations is Spade and Barrow. So she was talking about wonky carrots and curly capsicum. Woolworths have actually introduced a line of produce they call the Odd Bunch. I don't know if anybody's seen that, which I kind of, for me, it has a strong resemblance to what she was talking about in terms of selling, non-perfect, non-aesthetically perfect produce. But the difference would be where she pays the farmers the same for that produce. I think Woolworths with their Odd Bunch are probably paying farmers quite a bit less. But then on the other hand, I think where there is some resistance perhaps is with livestock producers, as like Tammy Jonas talking about the free range. There's like regulations, and Prime Safe is the regulator in Victoria, and they can be quite heavy-handed in some of the regulations, the way they police those producers. So a lot of these farmers have had produce destroyed for really kind of minor infringements, and they don't really know what the situation is. So those kinds of legal frameworks have been set up really to favour the big sort of factory farming systems. It's all about, get big or get back, get out kind of thing. So those are kind of issues that make it quite difficult. And talking before with somebody about the whole raw milk thing is like an example of that, of people wanting to access Whole Foods directly, and that being perhaps a threat to the big sort of big production, big process side of things. So, I'm conscious I'm doing all the talking.
I guess I've got a question for Maria. I guess around the whole sustainability aspect, it's interesting that I don't know who he was, the guy who had the PhD. Charlie, he was talking about, he didn't like the word sustainable, and I think you've said that before too, in some capacity too, that it can get bandied around so much, and I suppose it goes into that greenwashing camp a bit too, like it's a buzzword. How do we, I guess, help people to connect and to want to care around these issues and make it easy? Because I guess as much as we can oppose convenience, that's the concise society that we live in, and these ways of living and ways of consuming food have to, in some ways, be more convenient for people through creating, I guess, box delivery systems or other ways to make reducing waste easier. So can you tell us, I guess, a bit about what Sustainable Table does in that capacity?
Yeah, sure. So Sustainable Table is an environmental not-for-profit, and what we do is educate and spread awareness amongst Australians about how our food is produced here in Australia and what impact that has on the environment, what ethical implications our farming systems have, and importantly what each of us as individual consumers can do in our daily lives to help combat some of those issues and to help Australia build a food system that, like we saw in the film here, regenerative and viable for all of the farmers and the sellers and the producers in it. So a huge focus of ours is in empowering people, and I think it was mentioned earlier, what the film does really well and what we try to do really well is not go with that sort of traditional narrative of these issues of global warming and of industrialised farming being really negative and heavy and disempowering and alienating for people. We try our hardest to show people that actually it's not that hard to buy into these sort of food systems. Each of us have been doing it for lots and lots of years, and many of you have probably been doing it too. And I think we can all safely say that it's not that hard. There are more difficult things to do than change where you shop from and what you buy. But yes, you do need to be aware that there is a problem in order to want to do that. How to convert people is a difficult one, and that's the battle we always face. We're always conscious that most of the time we're preaching to the converted, because they're the people that go to our website, for instance, or rock up to our events. So it's a challenge for everybody, even the people in the sector, so don't feel alone. But I guess all I have to say about it is that everybody has a different set of values, and everybody has a sweet spot for instance, I sort of came to this whole sector because of health. I wanted to make sure that what I was putting in my body was healthy and nourishing me, and that was my sort of sweet spot. That's what value hit, that the value was sparked, and then I continued down the road of sustainability and environmental care from that. But somebody else, my boss, for instance, who started Sustainable Table, she actually came about it from an animal ethics point of view, and then learned more about farming techniques and animal ethics impacts, and then continued down the road of sustainability from that. Somebody might care about supporting local businesses. Someone else might care about, just getting more hands-on or meeting the people that grow their food. Somebody else might care about making sure that their children aren't consuming toxins and chemicals. So everybody cares about something. It's just about finding out what that individual person cares about most, and then the other thing I would say is that you have to lead by example. So if you're the only one in your family that seems to sort of care and, you know, shop at farmers markets and eat organic, which I am that one person in my family that does that. And so, you know, early on, I used to get a lot of eye rolls at dinner time, you know, when I would ask if the chicken was free range, etc. But that's the only thing I can do is continue doing the things that I'm doing and leading by example and showing that by doing the things that I'm doing, I'm actually leading a better life for myself. You know, that the rest of my family, they don't necessarily care about, you know, soil health or anything like that, but they are pleased that, you know, I'm reaping the health benefits of eating a better diet, of supporting, you know, local farmers, and so they're catching on slowly. And I think that's what you have to do. Each of us has to believe in what we're doing, keep doing what we're doing, and talk about it, and show our friends and family that we're benefiting from it as individuals. And you know, and that's how essentially you inspire people. Yeah.
So I'm just going to say one thing, and I'd like to hear from you about what your business is. I just wanted to pick up that point because you mentioned the point about getting this on TV and getting this message out to a mass audience. That's definitely an objective. Another one is, and it was also mentioned in the film, is like government showing some leadership here. And I just came back from Canada last year in Toronto, in the province of Ontario, where since 1977 they've had a whole of province marketing and branding strategy about these kinds of messages about supporting local businesses and local producers. It's called Foodland Ontario, and every government of every political persuasion has resourced that with $7 million a year for the last 20, 30 years, with TV ads, with radio ads, with billboards, with point of sale information in grocery stores, with articles in magazines and newspapers, just reinforcing this message about what a great thing it is to support our local food producers and businesses. And that's getting to the point now where in a province of 13 million people, 95% of the buying population recognise that logo and that brand and that story about why it's a great thing to support local businesses. And that's, you know, that's resourced by their government. They passed a Local Food Act in 2013. They created a local food fund worth $30 million. You know, that's an example of a government showing real leadership, and that's what we would like our government here in Victoria to start doing. So we've actually got a meeting with the new Minister for Agriculture, Darren Fulford, in April to talk about this and say, well, if they can do it in Ontario, how different are we? You know, why can't we have a local food fund here to start supporting all the people doing all this great work? Over to you. I want to hear from you now.
I guess I've brought Griz up here really because as an example of a local producer just around the corner, and your factory's in Cheltenham, which I think is a beautiful example of someone who has made the decision to go into business doing something that has nourished your family really, and, you know, bringing that to our community. And I guess I'd love to hear from you what the catalyst was and what producing local real food means to you.
Thank you. So the catalyst for us was my daughter, and she's going to kill me, sitting over there. A few years back now, when she was at primary school, got, you know, very sick on a very regular basis. So she had very sore tummies. One year she had 45 days of school. We'd been to see specialists, doctors, naturopaths, you name it, we saw them. And it got to the point where the end result was she had to take 3 types of antibiotics at the same time that debilitates most adults. And I just went, what? You know, what is that going to do to my child? So I decided instead of doing that, I would get educated and change the way in which we ate and what we put into our bodies to heal her health. And really what they were talking about the farms being stripped and us, you know, killing the soil, we as a society have mostly done that to our own guts as well. So, you know, this is the centre of your health over here. 80% of your immune system sits in your gut, and through drinking antibiotics, or too many on a too regular a basis, and consuming white flours and white sugars and all the crap that's out there, we've killed bacteria even further. And even just consuming water out of your tap is full of chlorine, which kills bacteria. So I got really interested in how do we recreate that biome that now has got also the greatest link to your brain health, by the way, the gut-brain connection. You know, the degenerative disease in your brain its source is in a good or a bad gut health. So the microbiome, you know, flora in your gut is such an important part of restoring your health. So we decided to replant and regenerate, like they were saying, our guts, and out of that was born Wild Ferments. So I run workshops and teach people how to make these foods themselves so that they can be self-sustainable. We, all of the food that we make, that we sell, we source all of the products locally from local farms in the area, and they're all organic produce as well. And we've got a commitment to remain small and create hand-based products, because even kombucha, anyone who tasted the kombucha today, tastes very different from other commercial brands because they have become mass producers. And as soon as you do that, you lose the integrity of your product. They're carbonated, they extend the shelf life, they you know, really appeal to their retailers' need to be able to store things for a long time. But you know, whether you buy our brand or any other brand, the important thing to ask is, once again, how was this produced? You know, where was the produce sourced from? And to really focus on rebuilding your gut health, because that really is the centre of your universe. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, we're just here.
I just want to know if you're looking at showing them at schools, or if you can maybe go back doing that with programs, help kids understand the connection with their food.
Sure, yeah, I'm very keen to show this in schools, and before the film was released I was actually invited to a presentation at University High School, where my son's going to school now, and yeah, I think this would be great to be able to take to schools. I'm very keen to do that. And yeah, just inspired to hear your story. I think that was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And I just also want to say to this audience in this part of Melbourne that I don't know if you know, there's a lady called Mariam Issa. Has anyone heard of Mariam Issa here? She lives in East Brighton, which is not a million miles away from here. But if you want another outstanding example of someone doing fantastic work, Mariam Issa came to Australia from Somalia in 1998 and lives in South Road, East Brighton, and she runs a community garden out of her own back garden. She was living there for, she said, 11, 12 years, and in 2012 she started having these dreams. She had 5 children, she started having these dreams about feeding another baby. She thought, I've already got 5 kids, I don't want another one. What is this dream about? And then she realised it was about, you know, her wanting to go out into the world, and yeah, she did it through creating a permaculture food forest garden. Essentially, it's a lot of it's around trees. And yeah, that was 2012, and she said the name came to her in a dream as well. And her project is called RAW, which stands for Resilient Aspiring Women, and it's very much about storytelling. She comes from an oral storytelling tradition from Somalia, and it's you know, people go there and listen to her story about, you know, the way you know, the situation in Somalia, and also she made the point that raw backwards is war, and this is very much like a peace garden, and every tree there, every plant is with an intention about love and peace, and I would urge you to go and check it out. She's an amazing person, very warm, very giving, and yeah, it's just a really beautiful place to go and visit, and it's just down the road, so Tuesdays and Sundays.
Yeah, I think she's actually been on Gardening Australia as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you Google her name,
She's got a website.
yeah, you can actually see, you can find the clip
So
that,
it's Mariam.
that she featured in.
Yeah, it's Mariam Issa, Mariam Issa. Yeah, she's an amazing person, and she's in your neighbourhood.
I'll have to get her onto a film night, I think, at some point. Let's kick off the Q&A, sorry, the prizes then, if you've got no more questions. And there's quite a few, so we'll get started.